This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Visit progressive.com to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary, not available in all states or situations.
It was really from the standpoint of viewed GoRout as an ability for us to keep our good prep players on the field longer. So an example of that would be you have 5 offensive linemen that, aren't in your 2 deep. You can play your 5 best guys against your first team defense.
Welcome to the Art of Practice presented by GoRout. Today we're joined by Phil Kleckler, who's the head coach at Lindsey Wilson College. They're currently ranked number 10 in the NAIA and are among the nation's most consistent programs, averaging nearly 43 points per game on offense and holding opponents to under 18 on defense. But what's equally impressive is how efficiently they practice. Lindsey Wilson is routinely near the top of GoRout's college leaderboard, logging over 2,000 reps in a single week, which is an elite level of tempo and takes an elite level of structure to run a practice like that. So, Coach, it's great to have you here on the podcast again. It's been a while.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. Anytime we can join and talk with you and have people learn about our program, we're always excited to do that.
So, Coach, you've built a very detail-oriented program, obviously very efficient too. When you think about practice identity, what do you think makes you guys unique or stand out in the way that you do it?
I think the biggest thing we want to do as coaches is we want practice to be competitive. Obviously, on game days, on Saturdays, it's a competitive environment. And if you don't have your players in a competitive environment all throughout the week, then you can be shell-shocked sometimes, when your opponent hits you in the mouth or something to that extent, you face some adversity, all those different types of things. So I think that's probably the biggest thing that we try to stress is being competitive and use the depth of our roster to get out the best of all facets of what we do, not only from offense and defense, but also from a special team standpoint.
Coach, when we talk about efficiency, it's not just about going fast. It's about making sure that you have meaningful reps and all that's set up, obviously, by a purposeful structure. So as you're designing a practice that does maximize reps, how do you do that without sacrificing quality?
We try to do as much as we can from a meeting standpoint before practice in terms of, our players understanding the schemes or the adjustments we're trying to do. And also that goes into, with our prep team players and trying to replicate what our opponent does that week, where we spend some time in the meeting room and show them some video and do some different things with that too. So to try to simulate that look. And it's more than just 11 on 11 too. It's group work and breaking things down. We try to, do some of that every single day as well, whether it's, perimeter drill or, one-on-ones or blitz pickup. I could go on and on about the different kind of segmented things where you can probably ramp the intensity up a little bit and try to keep guys safe and not have a bunch of bodies on the ground, all those different types of things. So, we take our spots, and when we do that, we're not going out and busting heads every single practice and all those types of things. So it's really trying to get the pulse of our team and what we need, what we think we need to have our team ready to play on Saturdays.
When you look at GoRout as the tool really for facilitating a lot of the efficiency, what you do in practice, what parts of practice are those used in besides the team? Obviously places like 7-on-7, inside run, any other spots where you guys are utilizing GoRout to get your players, get your scout team or people serving as a scout team aligned?
Yeah, I think probably the biggest decision, when we went on board with GoRout, for me, we already had practiced at a high level. We had already had a way. We've done some things. Sometimes people have the philosophy of if it's not broken, don't break it type of thing, where I just kind of have the philosophy of I always want to evaluate everything within our program and how we do things and how we can get better. I think all college coaches could say how much recruiting has changed. If you don't change what you're doing with a recruiting standpoint, you're going to get left behind. So I felt like we needed to kind of rejuvenate our practice, what we were doing. And it was really from the standpoint of, I viewed GoRout as an ability for us to keep our good prep players on the field longer, right? So an example of that would be, you have 5 offensive linemen that aren't in your too deep, you can play your 5 best guys against your first team defense every single rep the first team defense is out there. Where if you had 2 huddles and you're doing scout books and all that type of stuff, then you're not going to get that competition. You're not going to get the quality of looks sometimes. And so I think that was the big thing for me in deciding to go with GoRout was maximizing that efficiency, but then also maximizing the quality in terms of the looks we're getting. And it took a while for us to grow into it. I had some assistant coaches that were pretty mad at me for that first year, learning how to do everything and all that stuff. But here we are in a good situation here this year and playing really well. And I do credit, some of what GoRout's done for us into that here this year. And I guess to answer your question, we try to use it as much as we can, even when we do some good on good. We know we do some service periods and different things. And our second team defense is going to have those go routes looking at the call. And it might be in our terminology and they can look at it real quick and say, all right, this is what we're doing. But we try to maximize them and use them in every way we can and be organized with it. And we don't do hand-drawn cards or any of that anymore. Everything's electronic. And it allows our coordinators to look at the cards before practice too. Obviously we have some younger assistant coaches that are drawing some of those things and doing some of those things. So it's really helped us from a quality control standpoint to make sure the look and the blocking schemes and all those things are drawn exactly how they need to be from the coordinator level, which I think has also paid off for us.
I'm sure going back to the days of drawing cards and thinking about preparing to practice, to be efficient in practice, I know we had our inside run book, we had our 7-on-7 book, we had our team books, whatever we might have. That meant that you're either duplicating or, separately drawing up cards for each of those books. And boy, I don't know that we could have drawn any more than we did, right? To think about getting 2,000 reps in a week, I think we were maximizing it, with paper and marker at the time. But man, like this, the efficiency of it, being able to not have to redraw cards because you're pulling an image over into the system, just makes it so much easier and efficient just in the prep of practice, I'm sure.
Yeah, and gone are the days of, windy day and the scout book blows apart and there's sheets everywhere and you got people scrambling to get them all and then they're not in the right order. I mean, those were the junction days from when I, started coaching. So we don't have those problems anymore. We've had a couple windy days here this week and not worrying about that type of stuff. So, and just another interesting story. I mean, I'm not going to tell you who it was, but we went on the road this year and, we're warming up pregame and just looked in the trash can of our sideline and there's some scout cards that were thrown away, from an assistant coach. It wasn't anything earth shattering or anything, but it's just like, it eliminates some of those types of things that, you might find in some of those breadcrumbs. So that did happen this year for us. So it was just an interesting thing and it's something a problem we don't have to have because everything is electronically for us with GoRout.
Yeah, we had that same thing happen, sit down on the sideline and on the bench is the scout card book from the week. And it gave us an interesting peek on what were they really working hard, at least on that particular day. So yeah, you avoid some of those as well. Looking at that's a lot of reps during the week. I'm sure you guys film everything, look at everything for you. Again, the number of reps is great, but we talked about quality as well and evaluating that. How have you seen that, the effects on the quality over time and looking at film and being able to just, evaluate all those reps?
I just think another big factor is, when people maybe see that from the outside in, they're like, man, you're running your team into the ground or any of those types of things. Reviewing film and meetings and everything is the single biggest practice tool we have, right? And so if we can have our defense defend 75 snaps on a Tuesday and you do that by Wednesday and you do that by Thursday, you're talking a significant number of snaps where then when we're playing in a game on a Saturday and we only have to defend 58, our guys are going to be fresh. They're going to be, those types of things. So, we kind of ramp things up more at the beginning of the week and then kind of tier it as we go and get closer to game day. And we're not into those vests and all the other things that some of the bigger schools are wearing now and they track your mileage and all that stuff. But I think we utilize the depth of our roster to do that. And we get some guys, some rep in terms of some 2s and some 3s. We have our team ready to play on Saturdays is always what our goal is. So anything we can do to expose our guys to get ready, we're willing to do that. And so again, that counts some of those reps when we do a perimeter period or we do some of those different things. But again, it allows our coaches to coach too, where we don't have as many coaches holding cards up anymore and we can actually get in there and coach while the other coach is, signaling the next play into the iPad to set into those things, all those different things. So that was another big factor for me too, was not having a few coaches hold cards up and everything and allowing our position coaches to coach. And you really only need one person to run your prep teams essentially instead of maybe two or three.
Yeah, I think that's been a benefit that's been shared over and over on this series is that you think about the days of having to go in there with the card and tell this guy and that guy. And by the time that coach is done, explaining where everybody has to go and everybody's up there looking and paying attention, there's very little time to coach those guys up. So this is not just a practice efficiency tool. I mean, it's a development efficiency tool. You are getting more time with those players, whoever it might be, whether it's making sure like, hey, I need you to play the technique the way these guys do it, here's how they do it, or just coaching them up on his fundamentals in general. I think that's one of the opportunities that GoRout opens up for you.
Yeah, I think, when you talk about the development, it's the development for your prep team players that, we tell our team at the beginning of the year, I mean, just because you're on the prep team week 1 doesn't mean you're going to be there week 10. And so it's the development of that too, in terms of guys that compete and make plays against our offense or against our defense or on special teams as a prep player during the year. When you have an injury or those different types of things, those are the people that you're going to look to call up on, essentially to play for you on game day. So it's the development of your prep and your practice players too. You're trying to develop your whole roster and build the depth of your whole roster and not just the significant 25 people on defense and offense, all those types of things. We're talking 65 to 75 people, on each side of the ball in terms of how our roster is structured and doing those things. So we talk about that with our team at the beginning of the year, and it gets pretty competitive. We just actually did a kickoff versus kickoff, prep kickoff versus kickoff return last night. We haven't been doing some things we're capable of on the kickoff return team, last couple of games, and we're trying to challenge our guys, and those guys were flying down and giving us great looks and making us work. And that's what you want to do during the week on a Wednesday so that we're prepared on a Saturday so we can be better and do some things that we are capable of doing and what we want to do.
Coaches, if you're looking to maximize reps and create game-like tempo in practice, look no further than GoRout. With instant play call delivery, real-time adjustments, and seamless integration within your existing playbooks, GoRout allows your team to get the most out of every rep. Visit GoRout.com to see how top programs across the country are using it to level up their practices. Coach, as we get into this last part of the regular season here, we're in week 8 now as we record this, then into the playoffs. What kind of things do you look at in terms of adjustments to practice? You mentioned before making sure guys are fresh on game day, so it's early week, really heavier work, tapering as the week goes on. But are there any other changes you make late season to, again, make sure that your best is out there on game day?
Yeah, first we're not talking about playoffs. I mean, we're kind of behind the 8 ball. We lost the conference game last week and a rivalry game, all that stuff. But trying to see the big picture and what our team needs each week. This week here, we're playing a really good opponent in Faulkner University and have kind of snuck up on some people and they're really improved. So we know we got our hands full in terms of our game here this Saturday, but we have a bye week the next week after that. So coming off a loss and you never want to react or panic or anything like that. But there were some things where we got exposed and how we were operating and doing those things. And sometimes those things don't show up when you're winning 62-13, those types of things. And it's easy to gloss those things over. And again, we try to address those things and all that, but felt like we needed to make some changes in terms of what we were doing from a practice standpoint and kind of what we'd gotten into the groove the last 3 or 4 weeks. So we made some of those changes to try to get back to basics a little bit, try to work on some deficiencies that we have in all 3 phases. And, our players have handled those things really well. And they typically do when we put things in front of them. They typically do respond the right way for us. We ramp things up a little bit, just knowing that we have an off week the next week and knowing that we have a big challenge ahead of us and we want to go into this bye week with going 1-0 here this week and feeling good about ourselves in terms of having 2 quality opponents left in weeks 9 and 10. So that's our goal here this week.
Yeah, with a late season bye, what's the approach there? I know a lot of teams maybe get those mid or even early season, but for a late season bye, how do you approach that?
Yeah, so done it differently over the years. We always typically play 10 games, even though you can play 11 in the NAI. So naturally, you get 2 bye weeks. You get one kind of after non-conference, and then we get one during our conference because there's an odd number of teams. So there's going to be one team off each week with that. So after our first bye here this year, after we were 4-0 and won a really tough game down in Reinhardt University in Georgia, hadn't lost a home game in 2 years. We didn't play very well, but we found a way to come back and win, and felt like our first team guys had some mileage on them. You're talking about playing the number 10 team in the country, the number 8 team in the country. We flew to Florida, the furthest trip we've made in program's history. So we just really felt like we needed to kind of ease off some of those guys a little bit. At the same time, some of our second and third string guys maybe weren't where they needed to be. So we did a lot of good on good stuff with those guys, trying to build those guys up, and had our ones go through individual and warm up and do some things, but didn't take a lot of reps during that week until towards the end of the week when we were in helmets and kind of got back to it before we were getting into opening conference play with another quality opponent in Georgetown College. So obviously we played well in the Georgetown game, and I think we handled that really well. So haven't thought through exactly how we're going to do it next week. I think Saturday's game is going to be a big part of that and where we're at as a team and a program. But there's been times where we haven't been playing well and hadn't had the record we were capable of having those things. And then we haven't taken our foot off the gas pedal for some of those guys too. So I just think as a coach, you got to, the pulse of your team, lean on our leadership council, our captains, all those different types of guys to see how the team's feeling. And then in a bye week, you just got to adjust it to do what your team is needed and really focus on yourself. And I think a lot of that during the week, no matter what the opponent is, focus on yourself. Don't worry so much about your opponent. How are you blocking? How are you tackling? How are you doing the basic fundamentals with that? And I think the really good coaches that have guys that look themselves in the mirror and focus on your own output, you can be successful. You talk about not beating yourself, all those different types of things make people beat you. And those are things that we try to focus on as well.
Coach, to wrap up today, what advice would you give a younger coach out there about designing practices that build confident, fast-playing teams?
I think younger coaches always want to do the flashy drills and the equipment and all those different types of things. I'm a linebacker coach by trade. I kind of have some drills and some different things I've done for 19 years that sometimes people could say, well, those things are stale, all that, but we've had really good linebacker play here in my time at Lindsey and everywhere else I've been. And I think there's something too where you can say the name of a drill and your players can immediately get lined up in the drill and start executing the drill pretty quick when you don't need a lot of time. And then when you only have a 10-minute indie session during the season, you can get 2 or 3 drills done where if you're doing different drills every single week and you have to explain them and all that, what have you really done to do that? So just really big on repetition and being consistent so your players know what the expectations are. And there's a lot of times I will pause the tape and I will ask the player, what drill do we do to work on this fundamental right here? And see if they know the answer so they can see the big picture of, oh, this is why coach has me do this drill every single Tuesday or every single Wednesday. So I just try to be consistent kind of with the same individual and the same things we work on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Maybe one day it's more tackling, one day it's more block destruction, pass coverage, all those different types of things. And you break it down by the day and stay consistent. And again, just I think with the energy and how you practice and all that can break up the monotony of things, right? And they know what the expectations are and they know what the required output is to be successful on a Saturday within your position. And then, you can transition some of those things into group work too. And you work on run fits with the secondary, and we can go on and on about how you build those different types of things. And I'm sorry to give a lot of defensive examples, but I'm a defensive guy. So I'm focusing on that stuff a lot of times.
Yeah, no, Coach. Well, we really appreciate the insights today, and it's clear that Lindsey Wilson's success isn't an accident. You guys have built it through intentional practice, constant refinement. I want to congratulate you and your staff and your team again on a great season and for continuing to set the standard for efficiency and preparation. And best of luck to you and the team the rest of the way.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, Keith.
Today's episode was presented by GoRout, the leader in real-time practice technology. GoRout just surpassed 5 million total plays sent, a testament to the coaches and programs who trust their mission to maximize every rep. Learn more and see why top programs like Lindsey Wilson rely on GoRout to prepare faster and smarter at GoRout.com.